In today's video, I'm reviewing a 2013 Ford Expedition. The Ford Expedition was first introduced to market in 1997 and is now on its fourth generation. This 2013 model is part of the third generation that ran from 2007 to 2017, but it's basically a continuation of what we saw in the second generation, getting a minor refresh and some changes to the powertrain. Overall, it's really very similar to the second generation Expedition. Now, despite the fact that the Expedition is built on the same platform as the very popular Ford F-150, which is the best-selling truck in the US and has been for many years, the Expedition continues to be outsold by the Chevy Tahoe. In today's video, we're going to explore a little bit of why that might be, and I'll give you my recommendation on which vehicle I would buy if I was in the market for a full-size SUV. Comparing the third generation Expedition to the second generation model, it's very similar. You're going to notice very few changes. The overall shape and design is basically identical, but there are a few minor changes that they made to give it a little bit of a refresh and looks a little bit more updated because of those changes. Primary difference that you're going to notice is up front, where we've got a revised grille and headlight design. Bumper's been modified, and then as we walk around the perimeter of the vehicle, you'll notice some other minor design changes. Body paneling, rear tail lights, but in general it's very similar to that second generation model. That second generation model was a much more dramatic change from the first generation Expedition, which had a little bit more curvy design. Coming out in 2004 with that new Expedition, it's much boxier, squared off. It's got a much more modern look, and it's really been a pretty timeless design. If you think about the fact that it came out in 2004 and they didn't change really this overall design until after the 2017 model year, that's quite a few years on the market, and it continues to look good even today. Now, given that the Expedition is based off the F-150 pickup, it does share a lot of the design cues in common with that vehicle. The first generation Expedition was basically identical to the F-150, and when they came out with the 2004 model, they gave it a little bit of its own personality and character. It's got a little bit more contemporary look that's kind of appealing to the family crowd, and it looks pretty nice. Personally, I think that the F-150 styling looks a little better, and I'd almost prefer that they just took that same design and put it into an SUV form, but I can see their perspective on why they gave it a little bit more contemporary look. Now, just as GM offers its full-size SUVs in two different lengths, you've got the shorter Chevy Tahoe and the longer Suburban, Ford does offer two different lengths on the Expedition. The standard length is considered the Expedition, and then they've got the extended EL model, which you'll see has a little bit more length behind this rear wheel well, allowing a little bit more cargo capacity behind that third row seat. They offer four different trim packages on the Expedition: the base XLT model, the Eddie Bauer Limited, and the King Ranch. This is the base XLT model. You'll see as we get in that it's pretty simple in terms of the overall options, but it's got a pretty nice standard level of design. Doesn't make it look like a really basic, cheap entry-level vehicle. Overall, the Expedition really is a great looking vehicle, starting to show its age, and the new fourth generation model looks absolutely awesome. A really nice progression over this third generation model. But again, if you consider the fact that this essentially came out as a new model back in 2004, it's been pretty timeless overall in its design. Now, I wanted to point out real quick that on the exterior of the vehicle, we've got this keypad, which is a really cool feature if you want to go on a run or a hike or something and leave the key in the vehicle. Also handy if you accidentally lock yourself out to have that ability to get back in. I've also got this cool inset mirror. Gives you another angle, which is really helpful when you're driving something this big or backing up. Just having more views really helps to be able to see those blind spots. And then you also notice that it's got a heated mirror. And jumping inside, as I mentioned, this is the base XLT model, so it's pretty simple overall, but for a base model vehicle, it's got a pretty nice clean overall design. Pretty good use of materials. I mean, they're not real high quality, but you don't necessarily notice that this is a base model right off the bat. It's got a pretty nice overall interior. Seats are okay. I wouldn't say that they're as good as some of the other full-size SUVs in the segment. Feel a little bit stiff, but they're not terrible. As far as options, we've got power windows, mirrors, door locks, power seats, at least for sliding forward and backward. The other lumbar support and tilt are manual. Electric adjustment of the pedals, automatic headlights, some nice chrome accents. Instrument cluster has a nice modern look to it as well. Looks really great for a base model vehicle. On the steering wheel, we've got controls for cruise control over here on the left. On the right side, we've got controls for media, audio, and Bluetooth. In the middle, you'll see we've got CD, AM, FM radio, air conditioning and heating for the front and rear. Down below here, got the ability to put it into a tow mode. Cup holders in the middle, another storage space there. Up on the dashboard, we've also got some little storage space. Kind of a nice place to be able to put some things, but it's also bad that they encourage putting things up on that dashboard and get cluttered. Cup holders, large center console with USB and auxiliary input. Up top, we've got a button here for venting the rear windows, so the rear windows will tilt out with the use of that button. Got a built-in rear view mirror here, helpful if you have kids. And we've got one more compartment here for sunglasses. On the visor, we've got settings for 3 garage door openers, so you can program those to the vehicle. Coming around back, very spacious center row seat. One power outlet here, and then you'll see that we've got controls for audio and temperature. So nice to be able to give those controls to those rear passengers. You'll also notice that we've got vents in the ceiling. Helps with that distribution of that air into the rear of the vehicle. And then the seats do fold down fairly easily. It is a 2-step process. So you pull this guy here to tilt down that headrest, and then we got this lever here. Hard to do with one hand. Got this lever here. Hold that with my leg. There we go. And then that tilts up out of the way. It's actually pretty easy to do, but hard to do with a camera in your hand. And provides nice access to that rear seat. And this is one area I'm really impressed. I've tested a lot of full-size SUVs. Generally on these shorter wheelbase full-size SUVs, the floor extends out about right here. And you can see that in the Expedition, they really cut that down and giving you a lot more legroom than when you get in some of the other full-size SUVs. And so while these seats can be pretty tight in a lot of other vehicles, it's not necessarily spacious in the Expedition, they do give you a lot more legroom to where it'd be a lot more tolerable on a longer trip. So definitely impressed with this 3rd row seat. So you've got some cup holders on both sides. Heat vent down there on the bottom. And we'll come around to the back. And again, this is the shorter wheelbase, so cargo capacity is pretty limited when those seats are in use. You can go with that longer EL model if you need that cargo capacity more regularly when the seats are in use. But if not, it's pretty easy to fold this seat down flat. You got the 60-40 split. Really increases that cargo capacity towards a very usable space back here. The Expedition's offered with just one engine option, and it's the most popular engine you're going to find on the F-150. That's a 5.4 liter Triton V8 with a 6-speed automatic transmission. That'll give you 310 horsepower, 365 pound-feet of torque, and an EPA rating of 13 miles per gallon in the city and 18 miles per gallon on the highway in 4-wheel drive configuration. That bumps up to 14 and 20 in 2-wheel drive. Tow capacity is an impressive 9,000 pounds, and payload capacity is 1,620 pounds. Later years of the Expedition were offered with Ford's EcoBoost V6. I've got to say that while the Expedition's pretty nice, I'm a little bit disappointed that this third generation model didn't see more of an advancement from the second generation. In comparison, the second generation model was a huge improvement over what we saw in the first generation from a styling standpoint, interior design, fit and finish, the overall quality of the vehicle, features and functionality. The second generation model was so much better than the first generation of the Expedition. And then when they came out with the third generation, they just kind of stuck with what we saw in the second generation model, made very incremental changes, minor advancements, and it really doesn't keep up with the competition in the segment as a result. Despite the fact that it's pretty nice, it just doesn't have that same level of refinement that you get from the competition at GM and even other brands like Toyota. Now, while I don't think the Expedition is as nice as the other full-size competition within the segment, it does have some real high points. It's got a nice clean overall design. Powertrain is excellent. It's very powerful, very quick, great towing capacity. It does come at some cost with the fuel economy. This specific vehicle is saying that the average is about 11.6 miles per gallon right now, and so definitely a very thirsty engine, but it's powerful, it's very quiet, it's very smooth, and the vehicle as a whole drives pretty nice. The steering's got a nice stiff feel to it. Suspension is a little bit on the stiff side, but it's got a nice feel to it as far as not being like really soft or tippy in the corners. It's got a pretty nice stiff suspension in that sense. The overall cabin is very quiet. That's one thing that I really noticed as a change over the first generation model, is that there's a lot less wind noise, a lot less road noise, and it's just a much more quiet overall vehicle. Definitely closing some ground on GM compared to that first generation model, but not quite there yet. So if you're in the market for a full-size SUV, one thing I would really think about is what you're looking for in a vehicle. Do you want more of a truck-like ride, or do you want more of a car-like ride? If you want a car-like ride, I'd go with the Chevy Tahoe. If you want something that feels a little bit more truck-like, a little bit more basic, then the Expedition is a good alternative in that sense. And that's something that you really see with the full-size trucks as well. The Chevy Silverado drives a lot more smooth and comfortable, quiet, compared with the Ford F-150, but the F-150 sells better. I think because a lot of people like the basic nature of that truck, the fact that it's very powerful, and then it gives you a little bit more of that truck-like feel when compared with the Chevy Silverado. I think likewise you see the same thing with the Tahoe, and the reason that the Tahoe outsells the Expedition is because it's much smoother, quieter, more comfortable, and most of the buyers looking to get into a full-size SUV prefer that, whereas with a truck, they kind of like the truck-like nature that you get with the F-150. If you're looking to get into a full-size SUV and you want more of that truck-like experience, the Expedition might be the better option. So that's a review of the 2013 Ford Expedition. Overall, a really good truck, definitely a nice improvement over the first and second generation models of the Expedition, but in comparison to some of the competition out there, it feels a little bit dated, not quite as nice, and while I still think it's a great truck, if I was in the market for a full-size SUV, I'd go for the Toyota Sequoia or the Chevy Tahoe. I think that those are nicer vehicles, offer a lot more features, a lot more luxury. I think they look better, they drive nicer, and overall, they're better options than what you get with the Expedition. If you have any comments or questions on the Expedition, leave them in the section below. For more car and truck reviews, subscribe to my channel. In the meantime, thanks for watching.